board meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Elmont Memorial High School Model UN team on their victory at the 31st Model United Nations Conference at the University of Chicago on February 10th. The conference is an international competition that attracted over 2,500 students from across the globe. 8 Elmont students won first place in their committees, and 2 students won second place in their committees. These students showed firsthand that to prosper as a nation, or even as a town, it is imperative to put the needs of the people of their community first. I'm so proud of these young scholars and the way they work together to solve complex issues as they maintain peace. Please join me in congratulating the committee award winners, Naka Emi Agwali, Sultana, Brittany Bennett, Laura Green, Nicole Jean-Pierre, Giovanni Jean, Preston Brassois, Janice Ernwasi, and Orlando Ogobo. We also congratulate faculty advisor Nimge Gilliam and chaperone Philip Cabrera, as well as the principal Doherty. Congratulations. We have citations for your Model UN and from your students as well.
Really? So what do you want to do?
Anybody? We missed anybody? And I might take one here. And Philip, is Philip here? Yes. All students are going to be one up here. One back here. Right this one. So yeah, one this one.
Here's a chair. Actually, does this one?
Very good. And I'll get a couple more.
Now, Michael, I sent you an email yesterday. I looked the drawing.
Okay, yes, I read that. I printed out.
He
Yes.
told me to come talk to you about it.
I got to start off. It's real quick.
Looking this way, sitting up nice and tall. Good. 1, 2, 3. We're going to take a couple. Just check. One last time. Thank you.
Excuse me, sorry.
3D?
3D? Yeah. Oh, it's because I camera film. So to get different
Yeah,
angles.
he's so good. And then he publishes it on the website so that everybody can see it.
Well, they publish it there, but sometimes they shut it off.
But your camera work is very good.
Thank you.
We can use any of the films from him. He goes to every movie.
Yeah, I missed two. Yeah.
I'm going to
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled town board meeting. For those of you who have never attended a town board meeting before, we will first have public hearings followed by an administrative calendar. There are meeting agendas available in the rear of the pavilion. If you'd like to be heard on any matters, please go to the rear and fill out a slip, which you can hand to a public safety officer. After the meeting is adjourned, the town board will follow our custom of 350 years and remain in session to hear residents who would like to address the board on other matters. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
Here.
Councilman Ambrosino?
Here.
Councilman Blakeman?
Here.
Councilman Diaz-Casino?
Here.
Councilman Dunn?
Here.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Here. Councilwoman King Sweeney?
I now would ask Councilmember Dennis Dunn to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All eyes facing the flag, place your right hand over your heart and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Supervisor, if I may have a moment for personal privilege. On September 11th, 2001, we lost a lot of Americans at the attack on the World Trade Center. One of them was my nephew, Tommy Juergens, who was a court officer who was giving first aid on the ground floor when Tower 2 collapsed on him. One of the others, and there were many, was police officer George Howard of the Port Authority Police Department. George was not supposed to be working that day. He volunteered to come in off duty and rush to the World Trade Center, and while he was administering first aid, the building collapsed on him as well. It is estimated that between NYPD, FDNY, PAPD, and the state court officers, that 25,000 lives were saved by the first responders. George Howard's mother, Arlene Howard, passed away this week. And although she wasn't a resident of the town of Hempstead, she was a resident of the town of Oyster Bay. She was active in many organizations in the town of Hempstead, many veterans organizations. On her passing, she was 95 years old. And she was one of the first women to join the United States Navy when they accepted women. She was a World War II veteran. And she was a person who gave strength to all of those, including myself, who lost friends and family members on 9/11, even though she lost her son. And as a matter of fact, one of the most poignant things was she met with then President Bush, 43, at the World Trade Center site when President Bush came to speak, and she presented President Bush with George Howard's police shield from the Port Authority, of which President Bush states that he carries that with him every day. I would ask that we just rise for a moment of silence for both George Howard and Arlene Howard and all of the innocent victims of 9/11. Thank you.
Arlene was a county commander of the American Legion, which monthly meets here in Hempstead. And I was a county service officer under her reign, so she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. Thank you for having a moment of silence, Bruce.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the first public hearing?
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove a one-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with attached garage and remove all litter and debris from the property in Garden City South.
Okay, I have a number of slips of those who'd like to be heard. The first is Nancy Burns. If you please come forward and sit at the table. Good morning. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Nancy Bernardes, and my address is 12 Jeffrey Lane, Bridgewater, New Jersey.
Good morning. My name is Bradley Siegel. I'm the attorney who's been hired by Ms. Bernius regarding this matter. My address is 591 Stewart Avenue in Garden City, Siegel Law Firm.
Okay, you may proceed with your comments.
If I may, on behalf of Ms. Bernius is here as a family member for Mr. Tynan. The first matter on the calendar regards a proceeding where the town has put forth to demolish his home. Ms. Bernius has been in touch with the town officials, Mr. Schwartz. She's in the process of getting appointed officially on behalf of the estate. And the reason we're here is to allow her to be appointed and to see that the house does not get demolished. A terrible tragedy, for those who don't know, occurred within the town. One of the residents who is not at full mental capacity was found dead. Ms. Bernius reached out to her cousin back in December and was concerned, but let her speak to that. And the purpose of us being here is to see that this house not be demolished and allow her to be duly appointed so that she can take the affairs and put them in order and take care of her family member.
Councilor.
Morning. Excuse me. Sorry. First of all, I'm very, very sorry for your tragedy, for your loss. But I believe that notice was given to the family about the situation in this house, and that our building department has determined that it's a public risk to public safety. Commissioner, if you would just come and speak a little bit about the history of this property.
Good morning, Supervisor, members of the town board. That's correct. We have spoken.
Mr. Siegel, would you mind if the commissioner just sat there so you can speak into the microphone?
Good morning. Yes, the town received complaints about this property in 2017. And then on June 27th in 2018, we received a call from the Nassau County Police Department, ESU, and Adult Protective Services that they had to break down the door to do a well check. When they did a well check, unfortunately, they found the person living inside unconscious and unresponsive at that time, and they took him to the hospital. At that point, we did a survey of the house. It was full of debris that can be combustible materials. It's about 2 feet up. There was only 2 lights working in the home. There was no kitchen working. There was no bathrooms working. There was food debris throughout the entire home. So we secured the home at that time.
Commissioner, is there any imminent danger to the public right now?
At this time, we have probably caught approximately 40 rats that were in the neighborhood. I believe there's members of the community and neighbors that are here today that I believe would like to speak about the conditions of this house. And it is definitely a public nuisance. The conditions inside are terrible. Electrical safety issues, fire safety issues, etc.
Commissioner, has there been outreach to the family of the person who lived in the house? Has there been any outreach or notice to them to correct the problems and the violations within this house?
Yes, we've reached out, and she has spoken to Ray Schwartz in my office, and they're trying to, I believe, get title. I believe she's one of the cousins, and she's trying to get all the other cousins to sign off so that she can take control of this house.
Okay, so what is being done in the meantime to protect the neighborhood?
Right now, the property is secured, and as I said, we've caught approximately 40 rats, and we're still in the process of doing that.
Okay, so who's paying for the eradication of the rodents?
The town of Hempstead hired a exterminator to place the rats, and it will be put on the property later on when they're complete.
Okay, and the owners of the home would have financial responsibility for that, correct?
That's correct. They'll be able to put on the property.
Okay, now, Counselor, how long will it take for your client to get legal authority to act on behalf of the house? Yeah, please.
My client, Ms. Bernius, has been diligently working to get into that place, to be appointed. Her cousin was found dead in Suffolk County. It's unknown how he got there. He was of limited mental capacity, didn't drive. The Suffolk County Medical Examiner just last week identified the body officially, and now Ms. Bernius is in position to get a death certificate and to proceed. So she's been in touch with Mr. Schwartz, I believe he's in Inspector Services, he's in charge of that, and has been telling him all along. I mean, as to the notice, so to answer your question...
What's the story with the temporary letters? You can get temporary letters, right?
That Ms. Bernius has hired a separate estate attorney, so she's working through that. I don't think it happens in a day. It could take a couple of weeks, but she's going to do everything that she can to expedite the process. I mean, and in terms of the notices, Ms. Bernius was in touch with Mr. Schwartz in January. On January 4th, one of the notices under Chapter 90 was sent to Mr. Tynan, who's, of course, is dead, and to his parents. And then after that, they sent another notice, again, to the same Mr. Tynan.
I understand. It sounds like a very complicated situation.
The point is, Mr. Schwartz knows of Ms. Bernius, and he didn't send the letters to her.
No, I understand, but the problem is for the people that are living in the neighborhood, the rodent problem, and obviously the condition of the property. So the fact of the matter is that we have to go forward and make sure that the property is secure and that the rodents are eliminated so they don't create a blight on the neighborhood. At the same time, we understand that your family has property rights. So, Commissioner, typically we give 30 days for them to get everything in order. So, if I were you, I would let the court know, the surrogate's court, that you need some kind of emergency authority with respect to the house, that you act diligently to get that, and we always give 30 days before we do anything to give you a chance to get your affairs in order. So if you do those things and you show progress, they won't demolish the house. But if you don't, they will demolish the house. So those are the things that you have to do in order to get relief and get things done, because you have to understand the neighbors can't tolerate the situation the way it's been allowed to exist for too long.
And Ms. Bernius is aware of that. If to the extent that this is happening with the rodents, Ms. Bernius' interest is aligned with the town's.
Is there a mortgage on the property?
No.
So you own it free and clear?
Yes.
Yes. So
who owns the property free and clear?
Right now, it's in limbo because Robert is deceased and there is no estate established.
Was title held in Robert's name?
Yeah, they got to get it. They got to get it to the estate. So, would you be willing to assume financial responsibility if the town immediately took more aggressive action with respect to the rodent situation?
Well, I would say that Ms. Bernius, just to answer that, would like to independently verify what has been alleged regarding the rodents and what's needed. I mean, we reviewed the survey report. The report by the town's engineer, Cashin, I believe, doesn't recommend demolition. It recommends making the house safe and secure. So what the report says, which you all have, is if the town deems it needs to be demolished. That doesn't seem to be put in front of us.
What's the situation? Does it need to be demolished or just remediation?
It needs to be remediated right away. However, we can't just go in and start moving the belongings that way. So it would be up to the people who, if she can get hired to do that. Again, there's so much food debris in there, so as we continue to catch the rats, until it is cleaned out, they're not going to leave.
Well, what would stop you? I mean, there's nobody to complain if you went on the property, hired a group to clean the inside of the house.
I'm doing that. I would like to do that. I was advised by the building department that I do not have the right to enter the property because I don't have letters of administration.
So, in other words, if we pass this today, the game plan of the building department is to go in, clean the house, but not demolish it.
No, what we would do, we you just can't take control of what stuff is inside them. I don't know if he has valuables in there or not, but they're not allowed to enter, they don't have titles to the property, to the house.
Okay, so why do you have to demolish the house if it's not necessary? You just told me you could remediate it.
Well, again, they can't do it, and we're now in this catch-22 right now.
But if we give you authority today and go forward, you could go in and clean the house, because if you can demolish it, you can clean it, right?
We don't really have a contract to do that, but we can look into that. But
I can look into that.
The interior of the house is heavily impacted. It will probably cost more to empty the house out than it would to demolish it. Can I just interrupt 1 second? Why don't we hold off on this? Let's hear from the neighbors, so I want you before we make any decision. Because I'm concerned, the decedent didn't leave a will. This is going to be a proceeding for administration.
We don't know. I haven't had access to his
Has a petition to compel production of the will been made? How should we make that petition?
Ms. Bernius hired a lawyer to handle all that. She's not going to be able to
Has anything been filed yet?
I don't have the death certificate yet.
Okay, well, this is the problem's going to be is that I'm familiar with surrogates court proceedings. 30 days is never going to happen. To be honest with you, you're talking 6 to 9 months. And while I appreciate the sentiment of you and your family, I'm not really sure the nature of your relationship to the family. Under the surrogates court, you're representing you're a cousin, but a lot of people could be ahead of you under the state statute to take the place of the administration.
There is an uncle ahead of me, and he's
okay, so therefore, so that's very important. So the uncle is going to have precedence over you.
He's signed a waiver.
A waiver of what?
Giving me authority to move over to.
Okay, but he's going to be appointed before you, so he's probably the person we should talk to. While I appreciate your sentiment, raise a hand. Who's the neighbors here from Garden City South? I'd like to hear from them. Where do you live, man?
Mr. Councilman, what's the reason to demolish this house?
Hold on 1 second. Where do you live?
I live in New Jersey.
Okay. These people live in Nassau County in Garden City South. They're our constituents. They're our taxpayers. I'd like to hold your comments in abeyance. I'd like to hear from the taxpaying citizens because they're our constituents, and then we can address your issue. Can we hear from them now?
So I'm a town of Hempstead resident. What's the reason this house would be
Why don't you
demolished?
remediate the house then?
Pardon?
I'm joking.
No, but what's the reason this would have to be demolished?
No, I'm not saying this, but I think
taking care of the rodents and
the real stakeholders here are the neighbors on the street who are dealing with this. Let's hear from them, then we can make a decision.
But if there were
We have a number of other
rodents-
slips of people who'd like to be heard on this public hearing.
But what's the reason why the house would be demolished if there are rodents?
Okay.
Why is a disconnect?
Because that's the law. But let's hear from the people.
All right, thank you so much for your comments. We're going to be calling the next slips for the public hearing. Ellen Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Anderson. I'm from Franklin Square, New York. I live in the town of Hempstead, and I'm representing the Community League of Garden City South. And we have gone around and seen and spoken with the building department about the house. The house is unsafe. If you have small children, I certainly wouldn't let my children out playing in the area there because of all the rodents that have been seen. I spoke with a neighbor last night, yesterday afternoon, and she said at nighttime when they come home, if they shine lights over by the house, they find the rodents running around around the house and so forth and in the neighborhood. And not only that, but there are 2 schools located several blocks from this house, which is Gary High School, Junior Senior High School, and also Washington Street School, which is the grammar school. And our main concern is the children and also the neighbors that live right around and next door and in the vicinity of the house because of the rodents. And I had asked yesterday with the code if I could see the inside of the house, and they refused my entrance in the house because of all the debris and all of the clutter that is inside and in the house whatsoever. So we feel that the house should be demolished and then rebuilt again. And we would also like to know if there has been a family member around. Where was she when this person, Robert Tynan, really needed help before he had passed away?
Ma'am, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I'm Margaret Kelly. I also signed up to speak. I'm the president of the Community League of Garden City South.
This was brought to my attention back in June when Mr. Tynan was removed from the house. And since then, I've passed by multiple times. There's been no improvement to the exterior. The exterior is an eyesore to all the neighbors that are in the area. At any given time, we can see rats, okay? And as Ellen has said, the school is right there. The school is a very true danger to these children that pass by, that walk past this house during the day. Until the problem inside the house, and as I understand, the gentleman that was taken out was for medical reasons. He had been defecating and urinating in the area. All that human waste gets soaked into the floorboards and the structure of the house, deteriorating it immensely. So it's not just a matter of removing the debris that's inside, but it's a matter of gutting out that house, taking it back to the beams, and hopefully the beams will withstand new structure. In addition to that, the rats aren't going to go away. Like anybody will tell you, if there's one, there's a million. There's going to be nests throughout that house, not only the house, but the garage, both structures.
Michelle, since we have 2 slips of these ladies, we'll give her another 3 minutes.
There's 2 structures there that need to come down. People that live there, they look at this day in and day out. I have a letter from the community league to the board, and attached to that is a front picture of the house. And this is after Nassau County Police Department had to cut their way through the bushes and the front overgrowth to get to the house, to break down the door, to get into this gentleman that needs help. My question is, for this woman, and believe me, my heart goes out to her for the loss of her family member, but this was back in June of 2018. Why wasn't somebody stepping in at that point to make this house safe for this man to come back? He was under Nassau County. They were the ones that released him, not the town of Hempstead. He was at Nassau County Hospital. He was released 5 days after being admitted. Where was his family then? Why didn't somebody step in at that point to take care of the problem so the man could go back to a safe home? It wasn't done. Now it seems to be an estate issue. The people of this community cannot wait for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, or as Mr. Ambrosino said, months for surrogate court. This is the livelihood of people that pay good taxes and need to come home every day and look at this house and look at rats running around. And I'm sure they've all been impacted by the rats because they don't just stay in one place. I would appreciate the consideration that this house be demolished, as well as all the structures on that property, and let's start new and give the people that are paying their taxes what they deserve as town of Hempstead residents.
Thank you for your comments. Felix Focacci, if you give that to Michelle, she can.
Felix Focacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square. I first want to say that I've had 2 houses on my block where it was a similar situation. One had a whole drug lab in the basement, and when the guy died, it was abandoned. The scroungers came, there was no plumbing, no heating, no electric, no anything on the house. And it was sold at auction, and the contractor who bought it renovated it and didn't have to tear down the structure. And there's a lot of work done. There was a code enforcement officer, Friday in front of this house in Garden City South, just sitting there doing nothing. I'm not going to ask why, because I will not get a straight answer, but why did they just sit there and do nothing in front of the house? I'm not sure what purpose that serves, but that's what it appears that this house is not so damaged beyond repair that it can be cleaned out if there's imminent danger. Like Joe Ross says, if there's a reason to go in the house, he made the argument with the zombie home law and everything else that we passed a few years ago. If there is a public safety issue, I'm not sure why the town can't go in and just clean it out, because it's an urgent nature. It's like you're going to rip it down, but you don't want to just do the simple thing and clean it out, which will, then you could put the traps and catch the rats, and even if you tear it down, the rats are going to scatter. You're still going to have the rats there. You need to clean out the debris to fix the structure. So It seems like you're, using a cannon to do a job that a rifle can do, and I think it's just over the top, to tear down a house because you have rats. Would you tear down your house if it was, you came back and there was like 40 rats, or would you just get rid of the rats? I mean, I think that, you should use some prudent judgment here. Ripping down a house is a big thing, and it's very costly, and you could basically just get rid of the rats, clean it out, and use all that police power that Joe Ross says that this town has. It's an urgent issue, it's a public safety issue, health and safety. We passed all these laws on health and safety. Use that, that theory and clean out the house, get it so it's safe, give the lady a chance to get title, get whoever gets title, and then they could be mediated. I lived across the street from a house that was like that for 4 years, and the town didn't come by. There was another house there for 2 years, right on my block, within 200 feet of my house. And they didn't rip it down, and these extraordinary measures haven't been taken. And people from Uniondale come and complain all the time about this, and then we're not ripping down houses left and right. Here it's only 2 years. There are houses there 7, 8 years in Uniondale where they complain, and they don't get ripped down.
Felix, is your block close to Harvard Road?
No, it's not.
I was just wondering why you were hanging out there watching our code enforcement.
I wasn't hanging out there. I went to see it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, because it was on the agenda.
I was just wondering, because I'm sure the people who live on Harvard were wondering.
I lived on Orange Street when I had 2 houses boarded up.
It was just a question.
I understand. All right. It was an irrelevant question, too.
Robert Anderson.
Hello, my name is Robert Anderson. I live at 320 Yale Road in Garden City South. This is my wife, Linda. I lived in my house for 30 years, and my house is directly in back of 319 Harvard Road. And that house has been an eyesore for almost 30 years, and it has gotten much worse the last several years. Back in 2003, a large tree fell on top of 319 Harvard Road. And it stayed there for 13 years before the town of Hempstead came in and tore it down and cleaned out the vegetation back in 2016, I believe. The grounds have never been kept up. There's standing water during the summer. We get a terrible mosquito problem. I have personally trapped and killed over 100 rats in the last 3 years.
And we had the expense of taking care of that. Nobody did it for us.
Commissioner, has the Department of Health been notified about this property? You just stopped the clock.
That tree that sat on the house, the gutters were never cleaned. The amount of mold that must be in that house is probably beyond belief. For 13 years, that tree sat on the house. Okay, and the only thing that's ever been done to that house in 30 years was the roof was replaced by the town, I believe, did it. It has just been a disgrace, that house. No one has ever done anything to clean up the yard there. I mean, it just stayed that way for 30 years. And the family never intervened, ever. And we never, ever saw a guest at that house. Never.
If you would just stop the clock and let the commissioner, if you would mind, sir, just to let the commissioner speak into the microphone.
Yes, Supervisor, we notified the Department of Health. Years ago, Nassau County Department of Health used to trap rats and set traps. They don't do that any longer. So that's why private exterminators have to do it. And as she stated, they're all over the neighborhood, and it's been going on for a long period of time. And Councilman, to answer your question in reference to why don't we knock it down, just clean it out and stuff, the amount of debris that's inside of that structure would cost more to hand carry all that stuff out than it would. So that would be a huge lien put on that property, making it less desirable for someone to purchase and build another home. Number two is, all the utilities inside the house are not working. As I stated, when we got there was one light working upstairs on the first floor, there was one light working on the basement. So the whole electrical system is shot, the sewer system is shot, the water, all these things would have to be done to, and as one of the residents said previously, because of the 2 feet of debris. I mean, when you walk into the house, your head, I'm not tall, is hitting the ceiling of the room, okay, because there's about 2.5 feet of debris on the floor. The problem is, once we remove that, then we can actually take a better look at the structure. However, under Chapter 90, it talks about nuisance homes, and that's what this is.
So, it seems that basically the whole story is that this has been going on for a long time, that the relatives have not taken any action for years and years and years, that the rodent situation and the unsightly way in which the property is kept has been going on, mosquitoes as well, has been going on and on and on. When the government comes in to take control of somebody's private property, it's an extreme remedy, and we have to be very judicious in what we do. However, in this case, after listening to you and the previous speaker, it seems to me that it is warranted for us to take over this house and demolish it because of what's going on. This is one of the extreme cases that I've heard, and so.
Yes, and Councilman.
Well, you can do something in the meantime. I'm sure you have been doing things, but I think in the meantime, we should get the private exterminators there to try and keep it contained until the house can be demolished and the rodents eradicated.
The problem is that there's so much food inside of the house. As you'll hear from one of the neighbors, they said he'd go to Dunkin' Donuts, get stuff, and he never threw garbage out. So that half-eaten banana, that half-eaten donut was thrown on the floor. So the rats aren't going to leave until that is resolved.
Listen, this is an extreme example, and I think we are warranted in this circumstance to demolish the house.
And just so that the town board is aware, when the town board approves that, we give them 30 days to rectify the situation. If they're working on it and they're working diligently, on the 31st day, we don't go there and knock it down. We work with them as long as they're moving forward. The problem is in a case like this, where there's really no ownership, as Councilman Andrusino said, it could be 9 months and we could still be in the same boat, and it's not fair to the neighbors.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, do you have anything else?
Imagine a tree sitting on the roof of a house for 13 years. What the mold situation must be in that house, okay? 13 years it sat there. This guy never cleaned anything. He never had company. In 30 years, I don't think I've ever seen a light on in that house. Honestly. I mean,
as I said, I've been living there for 30 years, and I think I saw Mr. Tynan, I think that's his name, maybe 6 times altogether, because he was a recluse, I think. And but nothing was ever done to the property unless the town came in and cut down all the vegetation. And every time they did that, we had a rat problem again. And as I said, I've killed more than 100 rats over the last 3 years.
We've endured the expense of taking care of that.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. We heard your testimony. We're on your side.
Thank you for your comments. Rosemary Lancy.
I'll be quick. My name is Rosemary Lancy. I live at 28 Harvard Road, which is 2 houses away from the abandoned house. I've lived there for 23 years, and exactly the same as the previous couple said, the house has never been maintained. But it's been vacant for 9 months, and my backyard has been infested with rats. I've had the health department to my house 3 times. I have the certifications. There's nothing we can do because, as the commissioner said, the rats aren't hungry, so they're not eating the rat food. They're just hanging out in our neighborhood, and it's upsetting. Besides the fact that the rats, with the look of the house, it's got big X on it. The town comes and which our taxpayers are paying. The town is coming and cleaning out the property every few months to get rid of the brush, the overgrowth. So it's just basically the same as everyone else. It's not fair to us, the neighbors, to have to live with this house. It's already been vacant for 9 months, and before that it was not well maintained either. So it's unfair.
We agree with you.
I see that. That's it. That's to represent the neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Kay Fatima.
Thank you, Town Council. I don't look like any of your neighbors, I'm sure, over in Garden City South. I am not adjacent, but I'm very empathetic to the community and the homeowner.
Ms. Fatima, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Hey, Fatima, care of Catherine Marshall and Associates, Lakeview, Long Island.
Thank you.
Pause the tape, the clock, please.
Okay.
Okay, I lost 10 seconds as the referee would say.
I'm sure we'll make up that 10 seconds.
Thank you. All the council people here are very well aware of what's going on in these communities. And no one has been addressing in any of the situation except this council person, this gentleman here, as to the responsibility of the taxpayer. But then as taxpayers, the town board has the responsibility. There happens to be negligence. Okay, if this gentleman was allowed to live under these conditions, and then after he's been dead 9 months, properties in my community have been vacant and abandoned for 9 years, and the town hasn't done anything. So there's some onus also on the town of Hempstead, and the building department, and the sanitation department. We can't let these homes get so bad that we gotta then demolish them. Homeowners that want to come, families, young families, veterans, would like to perhaps purchase homes like this. And unfortunately, the deceased has to go through all of the probate issues. So it's a thin line you do. But I don't want any of these residents or the homeowner to be deceived as I was deceived last time I was here. You give someone 30 days, after the 30 days, if the banks aren't working, if the courts aren't working, if the communities aren't working, no neighbor should have to endure 100 rats. You know, send that bill to Mr. Robb for the town to pay for that. Okay, you shouldn't have to be, you have the responsibility. For the remainder of my time, please someone in the council address why is it taking so long for the building department to come in and say there's negligence there, there's mental health issues here, there's something going wrong. You show me a person's not taking care of their property, I'll show you persons who need some services that go beyond sanitation and building department, and the mental health services need to be addressed as well. Thanks.
Ms. Fatima, our building department, our code enforcement officers do not have the authority to enter people's houses forcefully. So in this instance, and Commissioner, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were called to the scene to examine some vegetation that was overgrown at the house. We issued violations for that, and Commissioner, please jump in if I'm speaking incorrectly. And then we were called by the police, because the police, Nassau County Police Department, who has the authority to forcefully enter someone's home, went in and they brought in the County Department of Social Services. We as a building department do not have that authority to just go into people's homes and make mental health evaluations of them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
She wasn't saying that.
I agree with you there, but the building department can call the police department. Okay, and say, we suspect that there's something. Because I've spoken with the police department, and they have the direct cell phones to the building department. So I know they're in direct connection. They work together. They work tantamount together. So that can be done. That can be done. We have to devise a way. We have to think of a way.
Thank you, Ms. Fatima.
Thank you.
I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Rory Gordon, Hop Hog, New York. Who's going to answer my questions? I don't see Joe Ron, I don't see the supervisor.
We're up here, Rory.
Okay. Is the
And,
supervisor...
she's got a microphone in the back.
Okay, thank you. Is the supervisor of inspection services, Ray Schwartz, in charge of overseeing all Chapter 90 properties? Is the supervisor of inspection services, Ray Schwartz, in charge of overseeing all Chapter 90 properties?
The one who is ultimately responsible is the commissioner of the building department and this board.
Okay,
There are people who have various responsibilities, but the ultimate responsibility rests with our commissioner and with us.
regarding the Chapter 90 law, to avoid taxpayers' endless litigation which costs the town taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, what measures have been taken to make changes to the code since litigation commenced of Philip Williams versus the town of Hempstead and Ray Schwartz in the 2016 case?
Why don't you wait for public comment, because that has absolutely nothing to do with this application before us.
Well, it does, because what I'm going to say is, besides sending endless notices to Chapter 90 locations, what due diligence does the town do to locate property owners?
What due diligence do we do to locate property owners?
Yes.
We try to give notice.
Besides sending it there, there's conflict.
I'm going to let Senior Councilwoman Gooseby let you speak, and go ahead, even though I don't think this has nothing to do with this application.
Okay, besides sending notices to Chapter 90 locations, I asked what due diligence the town does to locate property owners. I feel the conflict in the code leaves the interpretation vague on the procedural issues regarding proper service of a property owner. Proper service of a Chapter 90 would be most logical to be sent certified mail return receipt. I think it'd be in the town's best interest to take on a more responsible position and research the property owners or persons which may have an affiliation with the property owner, perhaps through a title search, an internet search, as the person may be deceased and a more definitive outcome will arise due to the more due diligence as opposed to sending endless certified letters without a return receipt. I think revamping of the Chapter 90 law would be advantageous so future cases will not be exposed to litigation and unwarranted expense to the taxpayer. Relatives of Robert Kieran, I don't know how to say his name, sorry, property owner of 319 Harvard Road, Garden City, are here today and are looming perhaps to commence litigation. Although the circumstances may be different in the two cases, the outcome is ultimately the same for the taxpayers. Taxpayers will be paying attorney's fees, and neither the building department or the town attorney or town board has done anything to make amendments in the code after the Philip Williams case to prevent endless litigation, which only makes outside counsel wealthy. Failing to make changes in the procedural operations of the Chapter 90 law leaves it vague as to the interpretation, which puts the town building department once again in a precarious position. Being proactive helps not only the taxpayer, but the homeowner as well. I hope the situation receives some considerations, as I see the code flawed and not being addressed in a responsible way by this town's body. Had this been a different era when Commissioner Joe Marcello reviewed Chapter 90s, I believe these situations would have been handled more dutifully. I believe the lack of knowledge of the supervisor in these demanding positions they hold lead to the downfall of our building department. This is not the only situation the building department has had in the news as of recent. I think an investigation of the department is in order, and I am not sure why 6 out of 7 board members voted down Laura Gillen's proposal less than 2 months ago. Thank you.
All right, I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Ms. Bernier would like to have a chance.
No, she already had her time to speak, I'm sorry.
There were two points that were not addressed. One, her as a family member. The other is that the inspection reports show that the town had found that there were no rats. So these allegations about rats are vague. There are no dates and times, but the inspection report in the town records.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino?
Well, before I vote, Commissioner, I have one question for you. If you were to go in, and you don't have the authority, but hypothetically, if you had the authority to go in and remediate, you place a lien on the house. The cost of that lien would exceed the lien you're going to impose on the house for demolishing it. So the estate would be hurt by remediating the property, and the value of the property would go down. If this lady is petitioning the court for fiduciary letter, she has an obligation to the estate to maximize the value. So by demolishing the house, you're benefiting the estate. That's correct. Okay. Secondly, when you demolish the house, if that passes today, please exercise caution to put a barrier so that the vermin doesn't extend to the neighbor, because it's going to be. Do you do that?
Yes, we do. And we have to get a letter from Nassau County saying there's no rats. And then we have 15 days to knock it down.
Terrific. I appreciate your diligence. I stand with the residents. I vote aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Nobody should have to live like that, so I definitely vote aye as well.
Councilman Diaz-Esposito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
Aye.
Councilwoman,
For all that the neighbors have had to go through.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove a 1.5-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with attached garage and remove all litter and debris from the property in Levittown.
Rory Gordon.
I said what I had to say. It was on all three properties. Thank you.
I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Number 2, public hearing number 2. Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we close the hearing.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakely.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove a 1.5-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with detached garage and remove all litter and debris from the property in Merrick.
Ms. Fatima?
Sometimes it's safe. This is how it first. Sometimes you just do those. Because the thing's going to fall into the basement. Just go.
I am again King Fatima, representative of Catherine Marshall Associates, Lakeview, Long Island. We do community advocacy with regards to community issues such as zombie homes. Again, I wanted to make an address and probably leave the remainder of my time to the council people. I very much like what I heard in this previous speaker's responses as to the responsibility of what we're doing with these Article 90s. I know there's another property that I researched that had an Article 90 issued in 2016, and the home still hasn't been demolished. So it seems to be pick, choose. We go here, we go there. If homes are infested with rodents, then they're obviously being infested in other people's homes.
Madam, that was item number 1. This is public hearing number 3, which is a property in Merrick. Are you talking about
Yes,
that?
I'm talking about all of these homes. Can the building commissioner speak on why they're demolishing this home? Building
Commissioner, can you please come home?
3 in Merrick.
Yes, I know where we are.
No, I'm talking, I'm the commissioner.
Oh, okay, I didn't know who you was speaking to. Sorry, I wasn't looking.
Yes, this house in Merrick is in extremely poor condition. There's holes in the roofs, the structure is not well, this house needs to come down.
Okay, how long has it been in poor condition, sir?
We first got the call back in 2012, and the people were doing some maintenance to it, and it wasn't structurally needed to come down in 2012. We continued to monitor it over the last several years, and at this point, it does need to come down now.
So how many years are we talking? 7 years, sir?
Yeah, 6.5, 7 years, correct.
And so taxpayers have been paying for building inspectors to go for 7 years. The house needed to come down in 20, you said 12, or you kept monitoring it? I mean, every year you monitor it, every month. Talk about the procedure of the monitoring, please.
Well, we get a complaint, because we're a complaint-driven department, we go out and look at the house. At this point, we have to make sure that it's safe and secure. And what we do is we continue to monitor that, driving by and making sure that it's secure so that the neighborhood children don't break into it and can get hurt and things like that.
Okay, so that this process went on for 7 years, sir?
It was secured the entire time, so it wasn't a problem. it became a problem when the roof started to fail and mold started to grow in the house and the ceiling started to collapse due to the water getting into the house. And as the conditions got worse, now it's to the point where our engineer came in and said, now it needs to come down. It didn't need to come down previously.
So it was vacant for 7 years, but it was bank owned?
I believe it, I'm not sure who owned it at this point, back in that time.
Well, look in your papers, you have a pot full of papers. Someone owned that house.
Can I ask a quick question, Commissioner? With the increase in opiate problems, aren't kids going into houses that are vacant more often now?
Absolutely, they got to
It's
stay
becoming, and especially if they're unsafe like that, we've got to do something. And shame on us if we don't, correct?
Right, and this house is still in foreclosure.
So it's still in the court properties. Do we have any ordinances, any rules, anything on the books in New York State that since 2012, can any politician speak on that could have assisted the town of Hempstead in making sure, A, that the taxpayers in the town of Hempstead are not paying to secure these things? There's been $33 million taken by the New York State Attorney General to assist towns, to assist counties, so that taxpayers are not overburdened with these problems. Can any council person, politician, appointed person speak on that?
Any work that the town does on behalf of a property is put a lien on that specific property. The taxpayers do not bear that cost.
So the taxpayer bears the cost on their property values being lowered, but their tax assessment staying the same. Their property values. If people wanted to sell their home next to it, such as other homes that are going to be on the agenda today or previous agendas, that means that we're just stuck with the problem. There has to be someone that can address this issue before my time is up.
That's what we're doing now. When we're alerted to problems with the home, we go and we send our code enforcement officers, we inspect the property, we evaluate, we issue notices of violation, we try to get the property owners to remediate the condition.
You could take them, you find people to make sure that they're aware, so yes, it could take more than 7 years, like the one you just had. So that's what you have to do. You have to follow the rules and regulations that the state.
The rules say that it doesn't take 7 years. You show me a rule that says 7.
It could take
Attorney Rob,
I'm not going to argue.
please. No, you don't, because there is no argument, because it's not true. Okay? There's no rule that says it takes 7 years, not after 2012. You show me that rule and by that law that says it can take 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 years.
Thank you for your comments. I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Back in session for public comment. The first slip we have is from Felix Bocacci.
Felix Bocacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. I heard all that wrangling about money and using fund balance. We're supposed to have a structurally balanced budget. But last year, I remember that a majority of the board wanted to pass $800,000 in raises, but there was no fighting. I don't know why you didn't fight that said that was too much money to spend, but everyone, seemed to support that back then, and the supervisor who ripped it up got criticized. But, I believe in structurally balanced budget. Why don't you, call it what it is? And the 4% tax cut budget, that's supporting taxpayers. If we use fund balance, then it's no longer a tax cut budget. It's just, fake. And I have foiled this, and I did it twice just to make sure I got it verified. I asked for the retirees and terminations, and most of the terminations have to do with part-time employees and seasonal employees. And I only got 44 retirees in 2018. And I remember from the budget hearing that we were going to have 100. Now, I even sent it back to Marie Jerome and I says, is this right? Because I thought that maybe they were mixed up with the termination. I says, can you make sure they're separate? Because 44 and 100 is a big difference. So, I don't want you to answer questions now, but just keep in mind, if we don't have 100 retirees, we don't have that less savings that we promised the taxpayers. Therefore, that tax cut is a mirage, and we're just going to take fund balance to make up the difference. And also to speak to what Mr. Rodkamp was talking about on the Sandy victim issue, Mrs. Archibald, who made it to the NBC News clip that Pacey Chang did a while back, she got the permits. She got the permits, did the work, and then after she did the work, and her house was completed and she needed the certificate of occupancy to close out the permits and everything, then she was told she had to raise the house afterwards, but she did the right thing. She didn't go ahead and just hire contractors without permits. So, and there are people that I understand also in that same situation where they did the right thing. They didn't just go out and fix the house. How many contractors, I mean, I know there are some, but how many contractors will work without permits? So, and one thing I like to discuss just again because it's so important is on the ethics law. We're currently in violation of ethics law, so I'd like all those people who feel they're ethical to ask for the ethics board for not accuse anyone of breaking the law, but make an inquiry as to is it correct that we now don't put out financial disclosures online like we are required to by our own town law? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pagacci. Margaret Castillo?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Margaret Castillo. I live at 2415 Maple Avenue in Seaford. And I'm here with a member of a group that was started with Sandy victims that are still in the plight of recovery. And we have some issues. Today we want to bring up 2 points. One of them is the Department of Buildings, and I have to contradict Commissioner Rodkamp's idea of it being such a sound system for Sandy victims. You know the saying, to hell and back? Well, Sandy victims have been to hell, and many of us are not back yet. And a lot of it started with the Department of Buildings. I myself visited one of the satellites that was in Siemens Neck Park 5 times. Nobody helped me there. They just gave me papers and told me I had to do everything myself and bring it here to the Department of Buildings. So in the Siemens Neck satellite, permits were not issued. So that's incorrect information. So anyway, Department of Buildings, I don't understand, and we've talked about this, and we have a group of, there's 14 of us that are together still battling to recover from Sandy. And it takes all of the areas from Oceanside to Island Park, so it's all your constituents are included in this plight. I live in Seaford, Bonnie lives in Island Park. Lido Beach, we have people in Freeport, people in Baldwin, people in Long Beach. We are like up against barriers with Department of Buildings. I had an inspection done. My foundation inspection was approved, and my floor is buckling. I hired a $2,000 expense an engineer to come in. There's an entire wall missing of the foundation that was in the plans. Why are these things happening? It's not fair to us. The costs are astronomical to us, and it's because there seems to be a disconnect with the Department of Buildings. Just from the day that we had to begin the process of getting a permit, the mistreatment that we were endured was unbelievable. I was to this building 19 times to get a permit to lift my house. 19 times I recorded it. Every time I came, there were 2 people that treated me with any kind of respect. One of them, I broke down in a hall, and I was so upset, and Inspector Gunther came and said, "How can I help you?" And he helped me, and he brought me to the right places. And the people who I had met 15 minutes before and told me they couldn't help me, all of a sudden, because Inspector Gunther was with me, they could help me. It was astonishing. And it just got so bad that I went to Supervisor Santino, and he helped me with, he assigned a liaison. And then John Novella was the only other person that helped me. He personally helped me finish, even against Rebecca First's wishes. They almost had an argument in the main hall because she didn't want to give me my permit, and he said, no, she's getting it today. And this is the things that we've endured. We have one other issue to talk about, so it'll be on her time.
Now, could you just state your name and address for the record?
Can I just ask before you, Justine, as far as your issue in Seaford, can you meet with Marcus afterwards in my office if there's anything that remains outstanding? I'm not aware of your specific situation since I represent you in Seaford. If there's anything that in my office that we can do to help you, I'm more than happy to do that. And so Marcus is over here, if you could raise your hand. If there's anything that's outstanding, I'm not aware of it.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Salsoni. I live in Lido Beach. Thank you very much for having this today. Appreciate listening and everybody here. Basically, my issue is with bad contractor, two bad contractors, and dealing with consumer affairs and the district attorney. And I do have an appointment. We have an appointment to meet with Rebecca tomorrow, which that's great. We didn't even know she existed until last week, so we're really happy about that and the ability to be heard. The problem is with these contractors not being licensed, and they're still out there. They're lifting houses, they're knocking down walls, they don't have permits, they don't have licenses, but they came running in to us, oh, we can help you, we can fix everything, we can do it. There's one contractor in particular who is suing one of us in our group who has 6 permits, and I don't believe, I'm not sure, I don't think he's licensed, but he's still working, he's still elevating. And I think what we would like to see going forward, just putting this out there, is we'd like to see a little bit more formal connection between the building department and the bad contractors. And Suffolk has this shame on you bad contractor list, something like that we could put into effect that people will know. Like, I had no idea what to do to find a contractor, no idea. I just lost my husband, and I was, and then it was just awful. I mean, the storm and losing my husband, and then I lost my mom. And this guy came running in saying, I lost my mom because the first bad contractor didn't finish a doorway. She tripped, she fell, she died.
What is their name? The contractor?
Emil Construction.
E-M-I-L?
E-M-I-L, Emil Construction.
From where?
He's St. Luke's Place in Baldwin is the address, which is weird because it's a house with a big yard with his truck in the yard, but I think it's a residence, not a business.
Well, that might be a violation of the town code.
Well, he's been reported for years. When I reported him to Michael Rabb in early 2013. Michael Rabb was liaison between Nassau and the people and New York Rising.
I was just wondering, I know you said you was in dealing with consumer affairs. Did they, did they pull the license of the contractor?
No.
I know you don't want to go through the whole story, but okay.
They, in fact, are supporting, they didn't finish with the Emil Construction, but the second one is Alexander Alvarez. Alexander Alvarez Design Concepts at 234 East Merrick Road in Freeport. And that this guy is still in business is mind-blowing. He has hundreds of thousands of dollars from New York Rising people. He is, I don't want to say what he is. Anyway, he had gotten, I don't know how he got trailers of his own company into Bethpage Park for people to live in while their houses were going up, and everybody was paying him money. And we're going to bring that to Rebecca tomorrow, but I don't know how he's still in business. He's just a complete fraud.
I just want to add in, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for her, but the other contractor, Lane, is home improvement. He actually has 9 permits out for house lifting, which he is not permitted by license to do. And the town has given him 9 permits.
Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. On that letter that went out, there's a phone number. We're trying to expedite the process of dealing with residual issues from Sandy. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for what you're going through still 6.5 years after Sandy. But please.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get up.
Yeah.
It's so late.
We are actively reaching out to try to find pools of funds to help people who are in this predicament. Thank you, Lady. Pearl Jacobs.
Pearl Jacobs, North Garden Civic Association, Meadville. Sorry, Senior Councilwoman Lucy's not here because I was going to ask, I had a civic meeting last night. After my meeting, one of my members asked, when will Senior Councilwoman Gooseby visit Uniondale. I know she has been in Roosevelt last week. I guess she's doing community meetings, so I was going to ask, maybe you can ask for me, Supervisor, or her staff.
I think they're members of her staff.
Oh, the member of her staff. Yeah, right over there. You can see it.
Could you ask Senior Councilwoman Gooseby when would she be visiting, having a community meeting in Uniondale? You know, Uniondale residents are asking, please. And can you get back to me? Clarence has my email address. Thank you. And you've been to Uniondale. Thank you so much, Supervisor Gill. You've been here last month, and I know you're coming back on Thursday. Thank you. And the residents appreciate that. So I have a question regarding, is there some sort of water tower revitalization project going on? They're painting water towers?
Yes, Commissioner, Commissioner, yes, we are, Commissioner's going to speak a little bit further on that.
Thank you.
Yes, in the current budget, there's money for design services related to the Uniondale tank.
I think we have, what, 2 tanks or 3?
Well, there's one in Uniondale.
There's one in Uniondale? I thought there was 2.
The other one is, that's the East Meadow Water District.
Okay, but Uniondale shares that. Did they have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe they have the name of Uniondale on that.
It has the name of Uniondale because it's in the Uniondale community.
Okay.
We want to put the community's name on it.
Is that going to be painted as well? Just one's going to be painted?
Right now, we're designing the Uniondale tank.
And that's located, I'm sorry.
That's the one at the foot of Hempstead Boulevard.
Okay,
The one going
and
over.
the one that East Meadow shares with Uniondale, even though it says Uniondale, that's not going to be painted?
Not in the current budget, it's not, no.
Okay. All right, and I'm not going to talk about the other one with no name, the no-name water tower, but it used to be Uniondale. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Donna Rezek? Donna Rezek from North Belmore. Marsha Barrios. Marsha Barrios.
She went to lunch.
Stuart Kroll.
Is she still here?
Good afternoon, Stu Kroll, Great Neck. I've got a couple of things to talk about, so I guess I'll have to talk quickly. Starting with the shelter, I think our shelter has the potential to be an excellent one. The problem, and it's certainly a severe one, is top management. Our director, Mike Pastore, allegedly wants to be transferred. I brought this up before. Why has he not been transferred? Why also can't he be fired for cause at this point? I mean, what is it, 5, 6 lawsuits against him? With one, the worst that could happen is if he sued the town, is one more lawsuit going to make any great deal of difference. My personal opinion is no. Our dog trainer, Christy Fonte, is working on a month-to-month basis for a few months already. Everyone knew when her contract would be up, so why is it that it's taken so long for an RFP to fill the position? Anybody has any information on that, we're going to be happy to hear it. In the meantime, some dogs have been turned away from the shelter. Is Christy Fonte the one making the decisions as to what dogs are being turned away? No dog should be turned away, and certainly not by somebody whose claim to fame is 4 out of 5 of their stated qualifying credentials are pure fabrications. The best thing about our shelter is the spay-neuter program. We have a $5 million budget. Perhaps someone will be so kind as to explain to me why each trapper is now being limited to anywhere between 1 and 3 cats per day. It is barely the beginning of kitten season. This is only going to get much worse. I'm not sure when our current liaison, who our current liaison is to the shelter. Perhaps an explanation might be in order as to why this program is now in effect. When the number of cats you can bring in on a daily basis changes so randomly, it makes a difficult job of a trapper even more difficult. If the permissible number goes down at the last moment, you've worked so hard only to release cats, it will now be more difficult to trap again. Each time you try to trap a cat, they become much more difficult to get. What is needed from management are consistent programs that our residents can rely upon. While I admittedly have not been to the shelter recently, I have seen numerous pictures of not only dogs, but adult cats in cages. A few months ago, I went to the shelter, Laura, with one of your attorneys, the purpose of which was for me to evaluate and make recommendations as to how things could be improved. I recommended an easy fix, at least for part of the problem: remove the large bank of cages in what is mainly an adult cat room. Adult cats do not belong in cages, no cats do. They get depressed, withdrawn, making adoption that much harder. It is unequivocally cruel. Obviously, nothing was done about this situation. It's too much trouble for a pastoral or whomever to find a place to put those cages. They could have put them outside. They could have done a whole bunch of different things with them. As to why nothing ever changes, I have my own thoughts, which I will share with you. Many employees, particularly higher level ones, are politically connected. They are satisfied with the status quo and are ill-inclined to take risks. Some of them come from North Hempstead, some of them come from Long Beach. Of course, they did a great job over there. Inspector Clouseau could have done a better job in Long Beach. Why must we subsidize failed candidates getting jobs handed to them as college presidents and now working in county clerk's office at $160,000 a year? As somebody who pays considerable tax, I'm tired of seeing animals suffer and political vampires turn a blind eye to it. We must endeavor to make citizens more aware of what is being done, and perhaps then the political machinations will slow down.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Susan Goldstone. Lucille Tafina.
Good afternoon. I wasn't going to speak about anything today, but then I've been sitting next to Diane, and her phone is blowing up with such horrible accusations, and again, the same attacks. And yesterday I had a conversation with her, and I was actually very happy to hear that her lawsuit was dismissed. And I've tried, and I told her last night, good, just end it, Diane, put it past you, go on. At this stage of our lives, we could be doing much better things. But Diane was torn and she wanted to think about it, but then after sitting next to her today and seeing what she goes through on a daily basis, I'm torn myself. Maybe she should appeal it. Like everyone is telling her. She has so many people telling her, you must appeal it, you can't stay like this, it's not safe what you're going through, the threats, the name calling. Until you live it, you cannot understand it. So I'm sitting right next to her today, and she's showing me her phone and showing me what is said, and I can't even repeat at this microphone some of the words and the names that they're calling her. Why I'm bringing it up to you is because one thing I know for sure, and I don't have too many answers to too many things involving this town board and the way this local government works, but one thing I know for sure is that the old administration, when they wanted to do something, they did it. They made sure it happened. And now I see, okay, you're here. And from what I see, they still seem to control what is happening. So I cannot understand at this stage of the game, I kind of do understand. I can't understand why you don't understand that the reason Pastori is here, Fonte is here, all the same people are here, the same people that they put here are still here. And it's going to come back and backfire because you empowered them. You threw a lot of fuel to the fire. And I think it was a big mistake. And I'm not saying that you should be going against them or against the volunteer program. I think you need to be a little smarter. And I think you should understand why this is happening. People are listening and believing what they're told, and they were told by certain people certain things. So it's all about perception, it's all about brainwashing, and you're in the position that you could have opened their eyes, but you didn't.
Thank you, Ms. Tafina. Nita Meredith.
Nita Meredith, Golden resident. Concerned about
being in April at this point and not seeing any real effort, directives or initiatives that address the lack of diversity in the contracting with the township. Still waiting to see what are the next steps with regard to the service disabled veteran-owned businesses, minority women businesses. I'm not seeing any of those things on this agenda, on this calendar. No news conferences, no press releases, no back and forth, no newsday spreads about what's happening as far as procurement and outreach and generating jobs and contracts for diverse populations. What I am seeing just seems to be a different type of divisive mindset that is not benefiting the residents. It really isn't. It's going on 3 o'clock. Those of us who had to sit here and wait and then to be told that there was going to be a half-hour break for lunch, we didn't get that break. We're not making money sitting here. It just seems like the debt is increasing with projects that are going to be fund balanced at the end of the year to make it right. That makes no sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to a whole lot of people, many of them who are either watching this via live stream from their second or third job, or for those who may be watching it because they have no job. That should not be, not in the largest township, in America's first suburb, where we still can't even tell the demographic structure of our veterans, let alone our minority community. That is a disgrace. And the conduct that was witnessed today, this is supposed to be a new dynamic, a new era. We're not trying to go backwards. We're not trying to go backwards. The costs are too high. We're in storm-damaged, vulnerable locations. I feel for the residents for Seaford. I know some people who are in Freeport who still have their homes. It looks like, they could do a space-age movie in the south end of Freeport, the way those houses are lifted. These people are still paying taxes and they can't live in their homes. That's what we should be talking about. That's what you should be fighting about. You should be fighting for the people who can't be here, who can't speak for themselves. And you definitely should be doing a better job at addressing the needs of our veterans. The parade permits, all that is all well and good. Making sure there's a flag at a BOLA or a 7-Eleven, fine, but they need jobs, they need contracts, they need help, and they need it now. We need to do a better job.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Donna Teitler? Donna Teitler? There's a note on here that she left, okay. Mary Ellen Craig?
Mary Ellen Craig, Uniondale. In response to the point that Mrs. Jacobs brought up about her email, I'd like to know, is there absolutely no staff in the office of the town attorney? Is Mr. Ra the only person who works there?
I believe her comment had to do with a traffic issue. Is that correct? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I believe it was connected back to a traffic issue.
Did someone from traffic speak with
Yeah,
her?
I think you were not here, so I did ask Ms. Jacobs to speak to Mr. Reed about the traffic issue. Ms. Jacobs, did you have an opportunity to speak to Mr. Reed?
So I think it was addressed.
The point at issue is the fact that Mrs. Jacobs sent you an email which was not responded to for over 3 weeks. And I find this egregious because if you have staff in your office, it's very simple to say, I've received your email and, you know,
It gets forwarded,
so and so had.
traffic, when a traffic email comes in, it gets forwarded to traffic, and they respond.
Nobody responds.
Well, I can try to look and see why that happened, but the process is, if we get something in the town attorney's office, when we get traffic in, it goes straight out to traffic. It goes straight out to them. Because-
However, it is plain and simple courtesy to indicate the receipt of an email.
I apologize.
As you should, thank you. The Cold War, I was trying to figure out from 1945 to 1990, is that about right?
Mr.
I was
Coe,
wondering what the
generally,
parameters.
I think, I don't have the years in front of me. Do we have it?
It's around that time.
Around that time.
No, it ended in 90 or 91, and I think it's
So you're figuring when the wall came down in Berlin is the end of the Cold War?
I believe it's in the code or in the real property tax law.
Somebody should have that available now.
I would have it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Sherman? Rich Sherman?
167 Jefferson Avenue, Marlborough Isle. Once again, same as last meeting, I think it's incredibly disrespectful that board members are not present when the public is speaking. Mr. Clayton's not here, Mr. Dunn's not here, Gooseby isn't here. It's just disrespectful.
I know that Councilman Blakeman had to ship a call, so let's just, before we attack people, there could be reasons for it.
It's disrespectful to the public.
Senior Councilwoman had a doctor's appointment, so I think we can all settle down a little bit.
Okay. I listened to Mr. Robkamp speak when Ms. Gordon was talking. And if I understand him correctly, it's the homeowner's fault if they didn't come in and check their records to see their status. If that's the position of the town of Hempstead and the building department going forward, I mean, I think that's a very, very, very poor strategy and poor message. Just want to say that. The other thing I want to ask is election season is coming up. This is a question for you, Mr. Ra, and I know Ethics Council, I don't know if he's still here, but my question, I know you're taking this up in a week when you talk about ethics, but my question is it permissible for board members who are candidates to appear at restaurants and other venues that are owned by persons who are doing business with the town and hold campaign events there and do other business with these people who also do business with the town as part of their campaign? Mr. Ra, is that permissible under the ethics rules?
Yes.
Are they permitted to take contributions, in-kind contributions, or services or whatever, as part of their campaigns, and still participate in voting on their contracts? Is that permissible?
Two different questions.
Okay.
If somebody has a pending matter before the board, as a rule, will not accept contributions from that entity if they have a pending matter. Once that matter is resolved one way or another, there's no prohibition.
I'm speaking of vendors who have leases with the town board, and also in restaurants and other establishments, you know what I'm talking about. Is it permissible for town board members to hold campaign events there, receive in-kind contributions or contributions and still participate in voting on the extensions of their leases or making other decisions with respect to their business with the town?
You can link two different questions. If there's a pending matter, the town board members will not accept contributions and do not hold events there. If the matter has been resolved one way or another, there's no prohibition.
So my question is, if they're taking contributions now and they're doing business as part of their campaign with those leaseholders now, is the town's position that when that lease comes up for review next year, it's fine that the board member can still vote, participate in the decision in that respect to that lease because they're not taking the contribution at that moment?
If a lease would expire, let's say, at the end of 2019, there's a 6-month period in which the board members would not take contributions.
Well, let me say, I know you're taking up ethics legislation in a future meeting. I think that's an incredibly poor policy. To believe that you can separate by time the contribution or gift or a business decision that was made by your campaign, and because it happened a few months ago, you're free of now to vote on that lease. I mean, I think that's an incredibly poor policy, and you ought to revisit that in your ethics legislation. And one last thing, if you will. This morning I participated in an event in front of LIPA headquarters that was sponsored by about 200 members of the Northport community protesting LIPA's tax certiorari situation. And I know you're familiar with this. The members of the town, residents of the town of Hempstead are suffering under this as well. It's a very, very serious issue. People in Northport have their local politicians helping them fight LIPA and protect their residents. And I'm asking you, particularly you, Councilman D'Esposito, and you, Supervisor Gillen, to please support the community's battle, really for its life, against these LIPA tax cert cases.
I will tell you that we've met with people at LIPA and we are talking to the county about this lawsuit and about a potential settlement with it.
Yeah, well, a settlement doesn't help us. What helps us is legislation in Albany that's going to protect us if we lose, or if there's a settlement. Because even a settlement is going to increase our taxes in such a way that it's going to cause many, many people not to be able to live there. And that was the point of this demonstration. The people in Northport and their local politicians they're not interested in the settlement. They're interested in fighting, and they're interested in getting support in Albany to do something about the tax cert case and convince LIPA to drop the tax cert case and protect the residents. We put up with these polluting and dangerous power plants in our neighborhood as host communities, and they have an obligation to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Sherman. We'd be happy to follow up with you on this.
Thank you.
Rory Gordon.
Rory Gordon, Hub, New York. Those two gals that were here earlier, I had never heard or seen them before, Margaret from Seaford and the other blonde lady. And in speaking today, I'm speaking on behalf of the people who are not here because they're afraid to speak because of retribution from the building department. Now, because I've become such an advocate on this red and yellow deal, and I was involved with the boat people, and now I've made all these contacts that I never anticipated on doing, so many people are reaching out to me. They're scared. They are actually afraid. Now, and I was like that too. I had my apprehensions when I first came here to speak. I know I had been targeted in the past at my business by the building department. I know I was targeted in my litigation with the building department. So I understand their plight, and you guys have no idea how many residents are in that position. They're scared to death of the building department because the building department is really mismanaged. And obviously, I don't know these ladies, but they kind of confirmed that today. Now that the town is reevaluating the situation, can somebody explain the formula that's used to determine whether or not a house has to be raised?
Ms. Gordon, we'd be happy to explain that formula to you. We can take your side and explain it. It's very complex. Commissioner, would you meet with Ms. Gordon and explain the formula by which we determine whether or not a structure is substantially damaged?
If I don't agree with that, because I've done an extensive amount of reading, where does that lie? For an example, there's a constituent that believes that the BZA has the ability to overturn the decision of the building department on a preliminary damage assessment. Am I correct to state that the BZA only makes zoning decisions?
We are trying to institute an appeals process for these homeowners who are unaware of the preliminary damage assessment that was done on their home and now find themselves in this challenging predicament.
That's not the question I asked. Georgino, would you be able to answer that? You worked for the BZA for a really long time.
Any determination of the buildings department that's made as a matter of and authority given to them under Article 16 of the town law is always appealable to the zoning board of appeals.
But do the zoning board of appeals have the power to overturn something that's got nothing to do with zoning?
Well, the answer is yes, depending on what the matter is.
But we're talking about the red houses. I don't see in the code where they have that ability.
The issue would be pursuant to what legal criteria does the building department make their decision. If it's something that emanates from Article 16 of the town law, then it is appealable to the zoning board.
And can you just tell me what Article 16 is, because I am not familiar with it?
It's New York State Town Law, Article 16, zoning and planning.
Okay.
You just do a Google search.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. And Laura, I do appreciate you sending out the letter. No matter what controversy came about it, I think it had to be done. And you took the bull by the horns, and I'm giving you credit where a lot of people, you know, have condoned you for it, but it's just not fair that those people were left in the dark. And I feel their pain. I talk to people all the time. I've been thrusted into the middle of this because I dealt with so many people in Wandsworth, Seaford, Belmore, Oceanside, and Island Park over the voting issue. These people they're scared, and it's a terrible position to be in because the thing that they own is their home, and that's the largest investment most of these people have made in their entire life. And now they've got their heads up their butt, and they're so upset. I just know I wouldn't want to be in that position. And on the note that Richard Sheeran said, I love that you're always here, or 90% of the time. It's unfair that everybody just disappears when we wait around all day. And thank you, I do appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Barbara Thomas?
You should have said that you want him to explain it so the world could hear, not just me. Because we always used to say, he used to always take me this way.
Good afternoon, my name is Barbara Thomas. I'm from Massapequa. I'm here just to thank someone I do not know, but I'm very happy that she has come into working towards a better animal shelter. And it's the new CEA president, Teresa Kaluka. I've been talking since 2015 about the issues within the volunteer program. With absolutely no changes of it, no ending of the attacks, no ending of some things that are actually security concerns for people. And your volunteers, as you, I'm sorry, Supervisor Gillen, claim to protect all these purple people are doing some wild and outrageous things. And it really has to come to a stop. And I'm happy that the new president of the CEA has come in and immediately identified all these problems that are going on in the animal shelter. And she's the one that's going to bring forth change. So that's a thank you to Teresa Kaluka.
Thank you for your comments, Teresa Kaluka. Good afternoon, Ms. Kaluka.
I also would like to talk about the shelter and the volunteers. Excuse me. For the most part, I believe a lot of them are there for the right reasons. Unfortunately, we do have a group that have gone a little astray. Unfortunately, they are spoiling it for the bunch who are there for the right reasons. It's my understanding that there are 134 of them. I understand that a handbook came out. I recently scanned through that. But I want to know how our staff is supposed to control 134 people going in and out. They have enough to do during the day. Is there a limit on how many volunteers can come in and out in one day? That I would like to know. Do they have assigned hours? Or do they just randomly show up when they feel like it?
Jerry Marino.
Like I said, I did receive a copy of the volunteer handbook, and I think it's a pretty good start keeping track of the volunteers and making them accountable and having some form of semblance. And as I say that, there's a part of the handbook that does refer to social media. I would like to show you some of the social media posts that these people put up that you so much protect.
Can I
Here's
see?
one. Would anybody else like to see it?
Hold it to the camera.
Here's another one. I find this very disturbing, and these are the people we're letting into our shelter with our animals and my members who are harassed on a daily basis. I just hope that something will be done, because as far as the rule book is concerned, they will be disciplined. And if you would like their names, I did print smaller ones for everybody to look at. And for my last few seconds, I just want to reiterate that I just hope that what's listed in the handbook as far as discipline, that those actions are taken, because this is pretty disturbing, to say the least.
Ms. Kaluka, if you have any complaints about actions going on, please let us know and we will
I
investigate.
would love to let you know, but unfortunately I can never meet with you. I meet with Mr. Lakaruba, who's been very sweet, but I would really like to speak with you.
I'd love that.
sometime
Yes,
in the
let's-
future. Great.
Let's set up a meeting.
Mr. Rod, just moving forward, if we can, if you can coordinate with Ms. Kahutka. I don't know who these people are, some of the stuff is actually cut off, but I think that if these people have access to our shelter and are having problems with CSEA workforce, I'm not even sure who this is directed towards, but perhaps your office can conduct an investigation and get the information that's needed from the union.
The
Diane Madden.
1,252nd investigation, in which I couldn't even get a listing of numbers. Is that what we're talking about? I couldn't even listen to dates. So I asked for the start dates and end dates, and each one.
Diane Madden. I do as well have to thank Terry. It's just disgraceful, though, that Bobby Thomas is, when we talk about 9/11, she served there, and she has been so disrespected at the animal shelter, thrown off pages, attacked, to the point where she has begun litigation. So these volunteers aren't just destructive, they're also causing litigation at the animal shelter, and if I do appeal, that will probably be primarily what I need to raise, so it stops, although it looks pretty hopeful that we have a new CSEA. You know, I always assumed they just didn't take action, the union, but it's a new day, and I'm happy about that. I want to talk about a meeting and the outcome of an investigation, Mr. Rao, which I was told is inconclusive regarding Christy Fonte's credentials and whether she had them at the time of hiring and the hiring process, which she did not, by the way. So I want to understand this correctly, that the town attorney's office and the investigator cannot say for sure that she had qualifications to apply for this job, and yet she remains out of contract, billing taxpayers $109,000 a year, and at the animal shelter. Could you please stop the phone?
I talked to the guy who was in charge.
I'm sorry.
Very stern. You know, I want something back.
I don't understand. What's
So the outcome of that investigation was inconclusive. That should have been enough to give to the board and say, we cannot say Ms. Fonte had qualifications. That should be enough. Now I'm told there is another investigation going on about Ms. Fonte, and yet we've not been submitted. In fact, I have some here. I would like you to see each board member, because this is an agency that claims and makes a statement that her certifications that she was claiming are false.
make an appeal.
That's not to say she hasn't run out and gotten certifications, but that's been part of the problem in overall, is that the town was hiring people and six-figure contracts, that the entire hiring process was fraudulent. And speaking of that, Councilwoman Sweeney, I had called your office, spoke to someone in your office, and I proposed legislation to address this, that if anyone moving forward would apply for positions, go through the RFP hiring process, and later it was determined by the board that they lied on this during this process or about credentials, that they would have to repay the taxpayers whatever they earned, whether it was 1 year's salary, 6 months' salary, 10-year salary. Sounds like a good ethics move to me. Could you please tell me what you think about that? I didn't hear back.
This week, and
Richard, Gina here.
package,
Have we looked into that?
the appeal, not the appeal,
We did, Councilwoman, and we think there are inhibitions, at least in state civil service law, about that.
my petition and my motion to
Is there anything that can be
his
done?
motion to dismiss.
We'll look into it.
And I'll send them all that with essentially the information I sent you, but I added stuff to the judge.
And then I wanted to speak about this playgroup, which by no disrespect to this playgroup that came in that originally, Laura Gillen, you tried to charge taxpayers $10,000 for, got a grant for $10,000. You mentioned that hundreds of staff and volunteers would be trained. I would say a dozen. And by the way, I was told about 90% or more of the staff at the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter were never even offered to participate, didn't know this program was coming in. This was a valuable loss. But the only one that gained from it was you, because you had 5 or 10 press people there claiming that these dogs would be going out, each dog, which sounded great to me. Every single dog was going to go out in the playgroup every single day for 30 minutes. Well, guess what? I don't think they've been out there twice since this, because this was not properly advertised. Again, this all speaks to mismanagement. I don't know, with all due respect, Mr. Quattruba, what you're doing there. I would love to know what is going on, that you know a $10,000 in grant money are precious these days. Normally I would recommend a $5 million animal shelter to ask for $10,000 when there were people rubbing pennies together to stay afloat in rescue. And yet you have a $10,000 program where you put it out to the press like it was some big thing, and about 10 people participated.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes today's board meeting. Everybody have a nice day.
Why didn't